Today on the Slanted Lens, we're going to take a look at that URSA Mini versus the Alexa.
A little bit of a David versus Goliath, if you will.
Yes, it is. We've got a great giveaway going on at the Slanted Lens. Spider holster camera systems and a lot of really cool stuff included. There's 4 lucky winners. Get to theslanteddlens.com and sign up today. Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
Kenneth is a great friend of mine, DP, and he works with us on a lot of the projects we do here at the Slanted Lens. Has a vast knowledge of all of the technical side of video and film and editing and that whole world.
Vast might be a strong word.
Is it a strong word?
It might be a strong word.
Well, compared to me, it's vast. I know that. Okay, so we had the opportunity of getting our hands on an URSA Mini.
Yep, the 4.6K version, not the 4K version.
Yep. So we had the new camera in hand. We were able to test it and shoot it. But not only that, we also had a Lars's
Alexa, which was great.
So we thought it'd be really interesting to take and to put these head to head and just see how wide that dynamic range is for the URSA Mini and how it compares to the Alexa, because Alexa's kind of the standard, isn't it?
It really is. You can't, every camera test you see online with the Reds or the Panasonics or the Sony F65 and stuff, they're all comparing to the Alexa.
So we set this up on stage over the YouTube space. We had just a series of dresses in the background and a model, and we really looked at pushing the overexposing and underexposing. And tell us why we did that. What do we want to see?
The reason that's really interesting to us is because if you overexpose by a stop or 2 stops, whether it's by accident or whether it's on purpose, how much information are you really holding? And if you want to bring that footage back to spec, back to your ideal exposure in post, what's your image going to look like?
So how much do you lose if you're overstopped by over by a stop or by 2 stops or by
5 stops?
5 stops. Like how far can you go?
Now, we did face one difficulty, and this is a learning lesson for just about anyone out there.
Yep.
The Alexa is a PL mount. The URSA Mini does come in PL mount as well, but we had an EF mount version, which meant we could not use the same lens on both cameras. Well, we were using a Zeiss Contax rehoused lens on the Alexa, and we decided to go out and rent a EF mount Contax lens for the URSA Mini so that the image would match.
Try to get it as close as possible.
Yeah, exactly. The color, the contrast will all be very similar. Unfortunately, we didn't do our due diligence in testing the mechanics of the lens before we shot, and when I pulled the footage into post, I realized that the f-stop markers on the URSA Mini lens were completely off.
Yeah, they did not work.
It did not match at all. So I took my Red, which has both a PL mount and an EF mount. I put both lenses on the Red camera, and I shot a range of exposures with both lenses, and I was able to match the T-stop on the PL mount lens to the f-stop on the E mount lens. So when we're looking at this test, you're going to see the URSA Mini is +1 2/3 stops or +3 1/3 stops. We didn't get the exact +2 or +3, but I was able to in post match the T-stop.
So it's not as clean as we'd like it to be, but it's certainly clean enough that as you look at the stops, I mean, a stop and 2/3 versus 2 stops, I mean, it's close enough that you can see and understand the information. I think all the information's there.
Exactly. You're going to see how the camera behaves in over and under exposure scenarios, and you're going to be able to kind of tell with some confidence what kind of dynamic range and what kind of color information you're retaining.
Yep. First off, I think we should just say really quickly, and we better get into it here,
Yep.
but we are comparing basically a $6,000 camera to a $40,000 or $20,000 used. I mean, so this is the fact you can even compare them.
Exactly. It's saying a lot for Blackmagic.
It is. It's saying a whole lot. Just by virtue of the fact that they can be in the same ballpark with each other is pretty impressive.
If you did this kind of test 6 years ago, I mean, there's just no way. The technology wasn't there in the $6,000 range. So it's an amazing camera right out of the box.
Yeah. So let's take a look at it. Let's see how it looks. See how it performs.
So the first thing we're going to notice as we go through this footage is the Alexa shifts a little bit green. And that goes for most digital cameras. And it can easily, with the tools in DaVinci and Premiere, it can easily be timed out. The Alexa is the industry standard. But you will notice as we move over to the URSA footage here, it definitely doesn't have that green cast.
No, it's much warmer. I mean, look at the dress. The red dress has almost a little bit of an orange feel to it.
It really does. And I noticed that throughout basically the entire range. The URSA Mini does push a little bit orange on the skin tones. And some people might like that.
I don't dislike it. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. Have a little bit of warmth there.
The thing you're going to notice throughout this test is the Alexa, as you push into the plus 2, plus 3, plus 4 stop range, the image is almost identical at every stop. We're looking at the URSA ProRes, and at plus 1 2/3, the image looks gorgeous straight out of the box.
And at a stop and 2/3, it still looks very pretty.
And also you're going to notice this URSA is shooting at 4.6K versus the Alexa, which is shooting at 2K, and the detail is definitely there. You look at her face, it's very creamy in the Alexa, which is nice, but if you want the detail and the texture in someone's face or in buildings or landscapes, I think the URSA would be a great choice for that.
It really would be a great choice. Well, I mean, even at 3 stops, obviously Alexa is still just beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. This camera, the Alexa loves to be overexposed.
It really does. The URSA is still holding up. Now, the color on this, I had to start pushing the color a little bit harder as we got overexposed. 3 1/3 stops, I had to push the color saturation by an extra 50% to keep that color information there. But we're not clipping anywhere.
No, but it's starting to feel a little milky a little bit. Am I seeing
pasty,
that? A
yeah.
little pasty, is that the word?
You could pull some contrast back, but the colors aren't as strong, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're starting to lose some of the colors.
The Alexa here at plus 5 stops.
I mean,
still looks almost exactly the same.
It does. It looks almost exactly the same. Oh my word.
That's why it costs $30,000.
Yeah, exactly. So we got, though, with the URSA, we didn't get to 5 stops because of our stop problem, right? We got 4 2/3.
The closest here we have is plus 4 2/3 stops.
But we're clipping at that point.
We're clipping at that point. Now we look back at the 3 1/3 stop. There was no clipping. At 4 2/3 stops, there was clipping. That's telling me your URSA is going to start clipping those highlights at about 4 stops, which is good.
Yeah,
I think that's
fabulous.
Totally respectable.
I mean, if you have a clue what's going on. Well, where this plays out, though, is when you're trying to shoot in shade and you got a blown out background.
Or you're trying to pull that sky, the clouds back. You know, you don't want the blown out sun and stuff.
I mean, that's where it's going to really play, is how can you hold that dynamic range. So
now you look at the Alexa, it's finally clipping at 6 stops.
Yep. Not terribly. I mean, it is clipping.
You could still probably use it. It's not great.
No, not great.
But at 6 stops on the URSA, it's well gone. Beyond usable. I definitely wouldn't use an image that was this overexposed. Gone. Now let's get into underexposure. Again, back to 0. Now our exposure on these tests was we exposed for the light on the key side of the face. The fill side of the face was about -3 stops.
-3 stops, but this is a little further than that?
This might be, I would say this might be a little further than it was in the overexposure test. Again, this is just minus a 1/3 stop on the URSA. Nothing to really, it's nothing noticeable.
Yeah.
But the image is gorgeous. And straight out of the box, the URSA is a little less, it's less flat than the Alexa, which would serve a lot of people well, honestly.
Yeah.
Now the Alexa does not do well in underexposure. Even here at -2 stops, you're starting to see loss of detail in the shadow side of the face.
The digital image is starting to be a little bit alive, a little bit.
Yeah,
you
look in the blue chips, especially on the color chart,
it's
the
just
noise
like
is coming
around.
alive. Yeah. The URSA doesn't have that problem. We're at -1 2/3 stops, almost the exact same exposure, 0 noise to my eye at least.
Boy,
maybe in the
blues,
deep black.
when you look at the blues on the color chart, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
At -1 2/3.
Very clean, but the color is desaturated now.
It is.
And I was having to start pushing the color pretty hard at this point. Just wasn't a lot of information there. Now the Alexa, -3 stops, this is where I would call it.
Yeah.
This isn't great. The key side of the face that is actually -3 stops exposed, you can still pull that back, but the rest of the image, you have sensor pattern noise, it's dancing
all
around.
through the color chart, there's sensor pattern noise all over.
But you got to give it credit where it's due. The color does still look amazing. Now,
so where does our URSA go then?
-3 1/3 stops on the URSA isn't looking as great. The noise is very minimal. We're starting to see noise in the dress and in the darker checkers, but the color is very desaturated at this point. Not a lot you can do to bring it back.
Whoa, with the Alexa. This is fascinating. The Alexa still has this very strong color palette.
Yeah.
But the digital noise is just
At -4 stops, I'd say the Alexa is pretty much unusable.
Yeah.
But the color is still there.
It's still there. There's nothing you can do with it, but it's still there.
Now the URSA, we didn't get a -4 exposure on the URSA due to our lens problems, but here we have -5 1/3, and it is clearly unusable. I would say even -4, you'd probably be struggling a bit.
Yeah.
I wish we could have shown that, but here the noise is pretty insane. It's going very blue, which is typical of a lot of digital sensors.
Yep. Well then, so now the test, and what we really need to look at is we shot the URSA outside in that kind of lighting situation where we can see this shade to open sunlight and hot concrete. So we're trying to hold all that world. That's a pretty tough.
Exactly. If you're going to buy a $6,000 or $7,000 camera, you're also going to be the guy that doesn't have 14Ks and, and a 3-ton grip truck. So this is the kind of situation you're going to be shooting in a lot. So you notice in this test, nothing in the scopes, nothing was clipping on here. There isn't a lot of detail in the background, but in terms of clipping, it was all colorable.
Absolutely.
And the shadows are clean as a whistle. No noise to be spoken of here. It's really fantastic. You walk from the direct sunlight into the shadow, and both are completely usable.
There's no light in that shot at all.
No, not
that is just
no
open
bounce,
shade, no bounce,
open
nothing.
shade.
You said it, and I, you see this even better than I do. But you said it felt like the movement felt comfortable. It felt cinematic.
The movement feels very cinematic to me. I was watching tests the other day from the Panasonic VariCam LT, which is twice the price of this camera, and the dynamic range is incredible. The color looks almost exactly like Alexa, but you watch the motion and it looks like you're watching video. It doesn't look cinematic at all. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the difference is. I have no idea why that is.
So interesting. Yeah.
But here, the $6,000 camera, to me, the motion looks just like an Alexa motion would. Now, it is worth noting this footage.
Her makeup was a little orange.
Her makeup was definitely orange.
A little bit orange.
So this isn't all the camera,
No.
what you're seeing here. But you look at her dress. Her dress is a little bit orange. It was actually bright red on the day.
It's a very bright, clean red.
And the way I colored this footage, I didn't want to do too much to it. I literally just boosted the contrast to fill the scopes, and I boosted the saturation so it wasn't as flat. I didn't do anything else. So this is a very out of the box kind of look that you're getting here.
Okay, so who buys this camera? Who buys it, and why do they buy it? And what's the application?
For me, it's people that are looking to go from your DSLRs, maybe your C100s, maybe your FS5, though that's kind of in the same price bracket. And they want to move to a ProRes or RAW camera that's shooting a cinematic image. I mean, we're looking at 4 stops under exposure is probably pretty usable. 4 stops over exposure is usable. That's going to blow your 5Ds, your other cameras out of the water. The dynamic range may be comparable on something like the A7R II, but you're shooting ProRes here or RAW here. I mean, you're going to be able to push this footage around, whereas on the Sony cameras, the codec is just really brittle. You can't push the footage around as much.
How would it compare if you're shooting ProRes like on the Ninja Assassin or something like that on a Sony?
That's a completely different question because the ProRes is ProRes. It should be very similar. But I will say the Blackmagic skin tones have always been really phenomenal. And so to my mind, someone walking from something Canon, something like a 5D or C100, they're going to feel pretty comfortable with this camera because the skin tones are pretty good out of the box as compared to some of Sony's offerings are a little more hard to handle.
The camera itself, on my shoulder, using it, it was not heavy. It was easy to use. I felt very comfortable. I mean, we didn't have a lot of audio or stuff hooked up on it when we played with it. I mean, we had it on set. We didn't have any of that going. It does have 2 XLR inputs, so it's made to be a cinema-style camera.
It really is, and that was one thing I noticed. I mean, the Alexa is like a 35-pound package. This thing kitted out with a matte box and a cinema lens and everything. You're looking at maybe 12 pounds. It was incredible.
It is incredible.
And another thing to note is a camera like the Alexa or Red Epic is going to run for about a little over an hour on a 90 watt-hour battery. This camera ran for 2 hours on a 90 watt-hour battery, which means instead of spending $2,000 on batteries, you're going to spend about $1,200, which is a big deal to me.
It's a huge deal.
And you're not going to be changing them as often.
It's got a great screen that pops out if you want to use a onboard monitor kind of thing.
And that viewfinder that you can buy is really great. The color was really great in it.
That was excellent.
Lots of features. So it's a great step up. Now, I will offer this as a little bit of a caveat. If you're walking away from this thinking, well, this is a perfect camera, I'm going to go buy one.
How can we go wrong?
I will say there are some concerns for me personally. I've thought about buying this camera. Blackmagic historically has had a bit of a rough track record when it comes to support. I've had friends who have returned their cameras 3, 4, 5 times even for some of the cameras. Various sensor issues or body issues. I had a friend who has the URSA Mini 4K, which is a different sensor but the same body, same processors, I believe. And he has had to return his camera twice because of quality control issues. So John Brawley, he was a beta tester for this camera, he kind of says, look, it may be hard to get a good camera from Blackmagic. You may have some quality control issues, but once you get a good one, then they're solid all the way through. And I think that's just something to think about if you may have to jump through a couple hoops to get a camera that works for you. But once it works,
yeah, we don't know.
Camera.
The jury's still out on this camera, on this version, on how it's going to do, and they've certainly taken some time to get it under control. It was a little slow coming out, so I mean, it'd really be interesting to see. I mean, again, you're talking about how does this camera compare, to Alexa. We know how it's going to compare. I mean, that's a pretty steep curve to be able to be in that ball field.
It would be interesting to see how it compares to like an FS7 or a Red Raven, cameras that are much more in the same price point.
Yeah, that I think is really interesting. How is it going to perform in that market? So.
But I will say, I mean, if you're just looking strictly at the image that comes out of the camera versus the price point, I don't think it can be beat, honestly.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. And that's what Blackmagic has done. I mean, they've been doing this all along. They're going to get into the hands of filmmakers a camera that is reasonably priced, that they can use and will make great images. And you know what? Is it the best? Is it a $40,000 camera? No. But can you tell a great story with it? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No problem. Can you shoot in, I mean, doing interviews and things where in this kind of mixed light and long, wide dynamic range, you're going to be able to use this camera in that situation.
So much flexibility. I do want to make a side note also. We shot, all the footage that we are showing right now was shot in ProRes. We did shoot raw footage, and I anticipated doing a comparison between the two, but I honestly found negligible difference between the ProRes 4444 and the raw uncompressed footage, which actually blew me away.
That is interesting.
There was a little bit more retention in some of the color channels on the raw, but I mean, even I'm not a colorist by any means. Maybe to a colorist that would matter a lot more, but I'm going to say to most people who are looking at this camera, the difference between raw and ProRes isn't going to be worth the trouble.
So there's a look at the URSA Mini versus the Alexa. I think we learned some great things about the camera and how it's going to fit into that world of filmmaking. I think it's a great entry point for people and one that you should really seriously consider.
Absolutely. But honestly, if you can, get your hands on this camera.
Yeah.
Before any purchase over $500, you should get your hands on it and at least play with it. Because you may find that what works great for someone else doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. It's all about how you work and what makes you feel comfortable. So.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a great kind of comparison between those two cameras. So check it out, pass it on, and know that here at the Slanted Lens, we're going to try to bring you more of this kind of information, stuff that will help you to understand the cameras that are coming out and the decisions you need to make. So keep those cameras rolling and keep on clicking. If you're going to grow in your business, you've got to get some help. You've got to get help from mentors and people who can help you grow. I can do that for you. Go to theslantlens.com, sign up for our business material. It'll help change your life. You can sit and think about business, or you can do something about it, and it's time to do it. So we hope you love this comparison between the URSA Mini and the Alexa.
And let us know if there are any others that you would like to see. We love doing them.
Absolutely. And subscribe to our channel. Get involved with the Slanted Lens. We're posting twice a week now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, every single week.
A lot of great information for people just starting out or people who've even been in the industry for a while.
Yep. Video.
I learn something almost every time.
Me too. Video and stills, so check it out.